Chapter, let's get going. Can you folks hear me?
Yep.
So, anyone wants to share progress or any new thoughts on the problem? Anyone made any fresh submissions?
I made another submission, but it didn't get anywhere near as good as the last one. But just because my last submission was like using the TensorFlow BERT model or whatever, and it was, yeah, like I said, pretty hard to sort of tell what's going on. I thought I would like switch over to Hugging Face and switch back to PyTorch. So yeah, I've moved to that, but yeah, it's like sort of early days yet, but it just like seemed very slow to train, so I hadn't trained it for very long, and like only trained it on part of the training set just to get things up and running. So the submission, yeah, it was like 0.38 or something like that, so it wasn't as good as what I had before, but as I say, it was just a sort of first step to get used to using Hugging Face. Hugging Face seems really good in terms of sort of the tokenization library or whatever. You can just give it the sentence pairs and it does everything for you. It tokenizes them and like it makes all the masks and stuff that you need. So
Would you want to share the notebook even if the results aren't necessarily the best, so you can just take us through the steps that you were doing?
yeah, there's one on Jovian already in my core thing. But it's using Hugging Face, but it sort of assembles the thing by itself. So like it takes the two questions and like tokenizes them and it inserts the separators all sort of manually. Whereas yeah, like now that I know a bit more about Hugging Face, I've seen the fact that you can just like use one line of code to do all that for you. So once I've got it complete, I'll submit it as well.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's still running at the minute. So.
Oh, I see. Okay. Anyone else want to share their submissions or progress or thoughts? Gautam, any luck with more submissions?
I didn't get much time last week. The only change I did was so until now, if you remember, I was using separate embedding layers for both the questions before feeding it to the LSTMs. So I made a common vocab and a common embedding layer, but something got ruined and it gave me worse results. So I'm allowed to like see why that's happening. And I'm actually thinking of switching to fast AI just for the uh,
Processing.
the text processing. Yeah,
Yeah.
the processing. But I think fast AI does it better than torch text, which is what I'm
Yep.
doing using now. So I'll look at that and see if fast AI will help me in this case. And something else that's bothering is sometimes when I run the same model twice in succession, I'm getting results that vary by point 0.1 or point 0.2. Like something that was when I was getting a result of 0.5, I think next time it becomes 0.7. I mean, that is something that frustrates me a lot. Uh, I'm not sure. Like even after I set seeds like torch seed and numpy seed, it's I think it still uh, differs more. I mean, yeah, the results vary by point 0.1 or so.
Wow, that seems. Um, I think I've seen in other Kaggle things, and I think Steve has it too in his notebook, or maybe you had it. You do the all seed kind of stuff, right? Like meaning seeding all the different things before you go off.
Mhm.
Yeah, in
There
my
are
notebooks, I tend to use, there's about 6 or 7 different things that I see. Like I see like the randomize function and like NumPy and yeah, PyTorch. Yeah, I can't remember where I got the function from, but
yeah, it's there
yeah,
in
there's like
Kaggle,
quite a few things. Yeah, there's quite a few things you need to see to sort of guarantee that it's not going to be random.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's there in Steve's notebook that he had originally for his submission, and I've seen it used. It's like an all seed, and then you just seed, as Steve said, like 6 or 7, 5 or 6 things at least. Okay. Thanks, Gautam. That's interesting, though, that if you continue to get different results even after doing the all seeds, that would be interesting to see why. But so on my part, anyone else, by the way, want to?
Actually, I haven't done anything original, but I copied Steve's notebook and I'm running it now. I just wanted to see how to work with Jovian and Colab and Kaggle. It seems to be working, although I'm not sure if I identified it correctly with Jovian. We'll see what happens. So I have a question. For Steve, when you develop, where do you develop on Colab? Like when you actually like change code and run experiments?
Yeah, but yeah, like as I said before, there's seems to be a few problems still between Jovian and Colab, and so yeah, to create the initial notebook, I sort of have to go to Jovian and like do new notebook there, and it creates, and then you go run on Colab, and at that point, it puts a line into your notebook with like a unique ID that identifies it, and once you've got it set up like that, then that should be sort of Jovian set up. And so when you do the Jovian commit, everything should be okay. And then after that, then I would just like develop everything in Colab, and all the Jovian commits should start to work from then.
So once you did it once you created notebook once, and then you can continue working on it, and it will be saved with that ID back to Jovian. You do Jovian commit.
That's right, yeah. So like every time you do the Jovian commit after that, even though you're down in Colab, because it's got its unique ID, it should submit successfully, and it should transfer the whole notebook up to Jovian, along with any of the Jovian sort of hyperparameters that you've set and whatever. So yeah, once you've got like the thing created once, then you can do all your work in Colab.
So, Steve, would that, even if you made a complete switch to using, for example, Hugging Face and PyTorch instead of TensorFlow, you would still do all that within the same setup because the Jovian Colab interface doesn't change. So you would still just start a new notebook in Colab then, or would you go back to Jovian and create a new notebook?
Well, depends on what you want to do. Like if you've created like one that's working okay in Jovian and you just want to modify it slightly, then you're okay just in Colab. But if you want to sort of go and completely change from doing TensorFlow to PyTorch and Hugging Face or whatever, then I would go back and start again from the Jovian stage.
Okay, so it's if parameters or vary, then you're just doing that type of hyperparameter tuning, then you would stay with the same notebook that you had created. But if the structure of the notebook were to change, then you go back to Jovian and create a new one if you were to like switch to PyTorch from TensorFlow or vice versa and stuff.
Exactly, yeah, because it is just important to get the sort of the notebook ID from Jovian, otherwise it'll not submit correctly. So if you just want to sort of play with one notebook and sort of test how hyperparameters are affecting its performance, then you just like stay within Colab and just keep submitting and you're fine. But it's just when you want to sort of do like a major change or whatever, and you want to start from scratch, then you have to go back to Jovian to get a sort of a new ID. It is possible, I think, to take an existing notebook that's had like no Jovian stuff done to it, and is it just purely in Colab, and there are sort of instructions to tell you how to sort of make it Jovian compatible, but I haven't sort of really looked into that much.
Thanks. Okay, anything else, Yuri?
Oh, no, that's it.
Okay, and as for me, interestingly, based on, I think, last week's discussion where Rekil was mentioning, and based on I think a couple of people's comments, maybe even I forget now who it was, maybe to mention that BERT uses layer norm. So one of the things I did was, if you recall, I had mentioned that I'd switched or at least went from a very basic neural network to one which had multiple layers and used batch norm. So I removed batch norm and inserted the layer norm. And as I was running that, I also saw some more recent papers in the Twitter thread about them, which said that apparently there are some very recent papers that the author tweeted about, which said that in transformers, even layer norms, actually they're finding out is slowing the training, which I thought was interesting. So I got a run with layer norm, which gave me better results than the batch norm case. And then I got rid of the layer norm as well and just went with no normalization, all with the universal sentence encoder. And interestingly, I got even closer to Steve's score. So now I'm at 0.32 versus, I think, Steve, you had at 0.31 on the private score, if I recall correctly. I didn't quite beat it, but I was getting closer, which I thought was interesting, that without any normalization. Initially, I tried with layer norm, whereas I was using batch norm, and that gave me a fractional improvement in the third decimal digit. Then I went to removing all norms, and it went by give me an improvement in the second decimal digit. And then if you folks recall, there was also a suggestion by Rekil about using learning rates. So I went to this. I also used learning rate on Plateau, and that gave me a fractional improvement as well. So just FYI, those things, getting rid of the norms and using a learning rate finder, both seem to help me with a deeper network. I also slightly tweaked the dropout, but that since I did it kind of in conjunction with one of the dropping norms, I can't know how much each of them contributed, but I think that dropping the norms seemed to have helped quite a bit, which I thought was interesting.
So what is your network now? It's a universal sentence encoder and something on top of that?
Yeah, universal sentence encoder followed by a deep as in 5 or 6 layers, but also the encoding coming out of the universal sentence encoder. I do the stuff I've been talking about of absolute of the difference and the dot product besides each of the encodings. So the U, which is one sentence, the V, the other sentence, and then absolute of U minus V, and then Hadamard product of U and V. And I concatenate all 4, and then push that to a deep network. And in that network is where I was playing with, originally had batch norm, removing the batch norm, replacing with layer norm gave me better results. Removing the layer norm or removing any norm and bumping up the dropout gave me even better results. And then the learning rate finder incrementally improved on top of that. So, which it was interesting to me that, with those changes, I was very close to what I think Steve had gotten with a BERT model, although he hadn't played around with it too much, meaning he hadn't optimized it, whereas mine has gone through multiple optimizations, as I mentioned. But it seems like at least the two are converging to about the 0.31 value, although BERT is not fully tuned for this task based on what Steve had presented earlier. He had done a lot of fine tuning yet on it. But that's both good and bad. The bad is that they obviously even just XG boost with a lot of feature tuning, hand tuning, people have gotten it down to like 0.16, whereas we are still stuck with any of these techniques at 0.31, and nothing below 0.3 that I've seen anybody achieve yet. So it's kind of an interesting situation. Another task earlier, Gautam had presented about co-reference resolution and how that's still a ways off from getting to human level. But even just question duplication so far, with BERT, with universal sentence encoding or SBERT or any of these things. Of course, we haven't exhaustively done it. I haven't, for example, implemented the SBERT augmentation that Yuri had talked about and such, but at least simple attempts using any of these seem to still, at least so far, get us only to 0.3. So either we still haven't tried a lot of the techniques with, I haven't put BERT or any of these other encodings to the best use possible, or we're reaching the limits and there are other features that need to be combined, which is interesting.
Hi, Srinivas. Mehul, I'm just trying to catch up. So what's the best right now? You said the BERT is giving the best results. Sorry, I'm. Mhm. Thanks. I see.
Go ahead, Steve. You have the best results so far, so you can articulate what you've done so far, and then I'll chime in.
Yeah, hi there, Mehul. Yeah, like although I've sort of got the best results, my results still are pretty poor. And in terms of, like I'm getting a score of 0.31 or something on the public or private test set. But when you actually compare it to like the Kaggle leaderboard, that doesn't even get me into the top 1,000. So yeah, like basically mine's just using like a sort of simple BERT classifier. It was more sort of to play about with BERT just to see what it could do, whatever. So it just takes the two sentences and it tokenizes them and it puts a separator in and then puts it into the BERT model and then just sort of performs like classification on it. Whereas, like I think like a lot of the people on the actual Kaggle leaderboard, they've sort of done a lot more pre-processing. And I think like Srinivas, you got like really good scores, didn't you? With like, what was it? One of the sort of, I can't remember. Is it a tree model or something?
Yeah, XGBoost. But I just literally copied it to test whether this competition worked, and I achieved a score of 0.16, and I'm still at 0.32. As Steve said, I'm even slightly worse than where Steve is at with BERT, and that's using either of two sentence coding, universal sentence encoding, which is used that from Google, and also SBERT, which is also from, or sentence BERT, which is again attempt at encoding sentences from Google. And either of those, with after getting the sentence encoding of the two sentences, which we are trying to decide whether they are duplicate, I take it to the network I described of, just take the, if you and we are the two vectors I get, then I do an absolute of the difference and the Hadamard product, and then take it through a 5-6 layer network, just linear with activation value, and drop out and do a cross entropy loss on a classification at the end to determine whether it's a duplicate or not, and train it on the actual data and end up slightly worse than Steve. So still, as he says, not even at 1,000. Whereas when I did an XGBoost on that was just existing that somebody had worked out way back and among the top, but I was at 0.16. And if I recall correctly, in order to win the competition, you would have to be at around 0.11 or 13, somewhere in that range, and we are at 0.31 with these, even with 3 years having gone by with BERT and with universal sentence encoding and stuff. So it seems, unless people that's why I seek ideas of what else to try. Rekul had mentioned, and I think Kato had mentioned using layer norm or varying that, increasing dropout, using learning rate finders, things of that nature that I've been trying to see whether we can, to what extent can we optimize the output of universal sentence encoder or SBERT. And at least I'm still converging to below that's 1,000 best submissions on the leaderboard, at least as of now.
I see. So for XGBoost, they converted. Okay, so they did some encodings and like how do you
quite a bit of feature engineering of the
yeah.
sentence of each of the sentences, right? So they, and also I think a lot of tokenization, the traditional language path, if you will.
I see. Okay. Yeah, just curious because I've been away. I haven't been able to join because I have this stupid project at I had this like deadline at work using XGBoost, and I realized it wants everything in, like you can't use strings right directly in XGBoost, so then you you spend a lot of time encoding your strings in different. So I was just curious,
yeah, but in the language thing, once you tokenize, then you're into the numerical world, right?
I see. Okay.
So that's why what Steve was mentioning, and then they've used all kinds of. At least I have to go back. It's been a while since I prowled the submissions to see what variety of things people have done. But I do recall that before any of them used, there was a lot of custom feature engineering with tokenization preceding that.
I see. Okay. I'll try and catch up to all of you in the next month or so.
Yeah. So any other ideas on our thoughts on any of the approaches? I think we have at least 2 or 3 different approaches. Gautam is trying the LSTM way, Steve with both BERT, Hugging Face. Hugging Face was something else I was thinking of trying, even with universal sentence encoding and stuff. Steve, as you were looking at Hugging Face, whether there are any pre-trained stuff with the sentences versus just the BERT models?
I haven't seen anything. I haven't looked into it that much.
There's at least one more. I think Hugging Face, like the way I found them, Hugging Face had this newsletter, which is pretty good. And I think in newsletter 1 or 2 had section on sentence encoding. So one was SBERT and another was another project. I can post. I'll post it in the.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, SBERT, as I said, I've already used. And by the way, if any of you have any further suggestions of what I could be trying or doing with USE or SBERT, let me know, or just post in Slack. And I'm kind of running out of ideas, so I might just try a different approach since I seem to be hitting a wall about 0.32 or 3.1 with at least what I know to try. Of course, I haven't tried Yuri's augmentation, but I did see whether in SBERT itself or somewhere I saw that the traditional augmentation that again Recollet suggested of just using synonyms or antonyms does not work in the duplicate question case. It actually, it seems, gives worse results. I think that was mentioned in the paper that you reposted itself. I went through it and they said that
somebody else posted it. I was just reading it.
Yeah, the one you talked, that the one you mentioned on SBERT augmentation or augment SBERT or something like that. That one talked about the technique, but in that they did say that
didn't improve results.
That yeah, just not. In fact, the reason they pursued the approach that they did was because the traditional augment that Rekil pointed to, which is switching words or replacing words with antonyms or synonyms, for this particular task, it seems to give worse results. So I haven't tried that yet, but and I haven't yet. I went through the paper, but I haven't yet figured out a way to do the SBERT augment. But beyond that, I am out of ideas with this sentence encoding, so I'd have to probably switch to utilizing the words, which seem to give at least have more opportunity to improve the score beyond the 0.31 where we are at right now.
By the way, the XGBoost notebook that you were mentioning, is that all in Chinese? That's a top,
yes.
a top scoring. Okay, top scoring notebook.
Probably.
Okay.
It probably is. Yeah, because as I said, my goal was simply to make sure that I could make a submission and it still worked. So I just picked something that I think it was submitted just about a month or something recently. So I took that and just went through it and resubmitted it, and that's and I think I got a score of 0.16, which it's like half of where we are at right now. .31 is the best. That's Steve's, and that was at 0.16. Any other thoughts or ideas for, of course, another path that nobody has yet tried, and I would encourage people to try, is this whole Siamese network approach. We've shared a couple of papers about that. I believe even, Gautam, when he shared the Quora guys, their internal approach, two of them were LSTM based, one a variant of the other, and the third one was a Siamese network based approach. So that's worth a shot to see whether it gets us past where we seem to be stuck. Or when I say we, I mean collective we, the broad we of people joining the call are still at around 0.31 best, which Steve has. So Siamese might be another thing to try over the next, if you're wanting to get your hands dirty and also have an opportunity to beat what everybody is doing currently, that would be something I would recommend to try. Besides that, any other thoughts? Steve, Gautam. So Steve, besides BERT and using the Hugging Face API, were you planning on doing any further fine tuning of BERT?
What I was planning to do was, like once I got sort of the PyTorch version of the notebook running, just because I'm more familiar with that, then I was going to try and like add in the stuff like that Rekel had said about 2 weeks ago, like his like the transformations of text data or whatever, and the augmentation of text data. So I was going to see would that help. But yeah, I was just trying to get sort of a baseline model running. My trouble is though, when I made the PyTorch version of this, it seems to go very, very slowly. So you can use like Distilbert, which is the cut down version. But one thing I found was I've just posted a link in the chat there which describes Hugging Face's whole mechanism for how you tokenize a pair of sentences. And like with that, as I said, you can like use a single tokenizer line which takes the pair of sentences and it creates you the three tensors. So it gives you like your tokenized sentence which is padded, and then it gives you the two other tensors like the mask for the attention mask and the one to show what sentence the thing's from. But I tried with Distilbert, and when I used it, it didn't return me back the one of the tensors. I think it was like the tokenized one. But I'm not really familiar with Distilbert. I was just wondering if anybody would know, like, is Distilbert not meant for working with pairs of sentences?
Yeah, I don't know. What I can tell you is I did use the Distilbert version of the SBERT model trained specifically for question pair duplication. So if you go to the SBERT link site or wherever they have, again, they have SBERT, which is SentenceBERT, trained for a variety of sub tasks. And one of the tasks is Quora question pairs. And they use a Distilbert model. But that Distilbert model is obviously a Distilbert model of, or a Distilbert version of a SBERT model. So,
yeah,
that's different from what you're talking about of a Distilbert model of BERT. If that makes sense.
Steve, can you just repeat the particular issue that you had?
Yeah, in the Hugging Face thing, it's got so it's got a function which is called auto tokenizer. I think John went through it last week in the Stanford group, and when you create that, you give it like the name of the BERT model that you're working with. So, for example, like BERT base case or whatever is like the standard one, and then when you take that, you can like then use the function whatever, just the tokenizer thing, and you give it the sentence pairs. And if you use the standard BERT model, it'll return you three tensors, like one for like the normal tokenized IDs, and like one for showing you which sentence the tokens are from, and then one for the attention mask. Whereas if you create the auto encoder thing using a Distilbert model, then it doesn't return back the mask to show what sentence each thing has come from. It only returns two tensors as opposed to three.
Tokenizer dot encode plus there is an argument called return token type IDs. So I think that should be set true. I'm not sure if it's set true by default, but that's something you can try out. I've actually like played with Distilbert on Hugging Face, and I mean I have the notebook open right now, and I have an argument that has which is return token type IDs. You can check if it's set to true. That could be the case.
Yeah, that's probably it then. I'll give that a go, because I was just trying to get the size of the model down to speed things up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cheers.
Okay. Thanks, Gautam. Any other thoughts or ideas on what any of us should try or attempt to get a better scope? Also, I think as Gautam was saying, maybe it may be worthwhile to look at what features people have generated and then combine it with something, but then you'll have to figure out a way to take those features, encode them with the current encoding, and see whether the combination works and stuff. So that's quite complicated.
You can just concatenate them, right?
You can in an LSTM, right? But well, in a sentence encoding, that's what makes it difficult because it's already kind of combined the words. So unless the features are of such combinations, if it's a word level thing, yeah, you could still try it. There's nothing. Yeah, you're right. It could still probably just concatenate and try.
Yeah. No, I mean, you have a neural net which takes in the u minus v u into v thing, right?
Yes, yes.
And then you can just like
Add to
add
that.
these features to
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. Because in a way, the USE or even SBERT are just like glove or something, right? They just it. The only difference is they encode sentences versus words.
Yeah.
So, but if the features are for words, then you would have to find out a way, maybe, because when you use USE or SBERT, then you don't have the sequencing thing like you do, for example, in your model, or like Steve would
And
have.
how would they use word level features in XGBoost? It has to be
Yeah, I
features
will look at
for
that.
the whole thing, right?
It would probably uh, be. I haven't looked into whether they just combine or convert the sentence into a single encoding before they submit it. It's a good question. I have to go back and look at what folks did using XGBoost and other techniques. Good question. To go back and look at what people have done to get even better scores than even in the 0.2 kind of range. Forget the best scores, but because I don't want to look at the best score submissions or solutions yet, but even getting the encodings like you're talking about, Kaggle. Okay, I guess we have quite some work and in need of more ideas to try. So anybody else want to contribute any other thoughts or ideas for people to try or improve the scores with what we've got? I think we are kind of at a plateau, but let's keep pushing because I think this is when trying new things and suddenly something breaks through, as Jeremy has said often, that just persistence and trying different things, and then suddenly something works and you break through to the next level. So hoping Steve and Gautam can get to the 0.2 level. I'll give it my shot as well. Encourage everybody else to try. Dinesh, were you able to make any further submissions? You're trying last time to, if I recall, either with Bert or some other approach. I forget now.
Yeah, I did manage to do it. So I did the way Steve suggested. So split them into two. First the training and another notebook with the inference, and then I was managed to submit the score at least. I didn't get, for some reason I'm not getting that upgrade. The option I tried many times, it errors for me. So I'm still stuck with the old style.
Oh, meaning you're talking about Google Pro.
Yeah, Pro, yeah. First of all, like I don't get the option on the collab itself, but then when you Google it, it comes in with the button. I press in it just straight away give me an error. And interestingly, I'm not sure what's wrong, but it says something about payment, but it doesn't say payment method is wrong because I have a credit card already registered. It says just try some other time. And initially I thought this Pro Collab Pro was only available in the US. That was my impression. But as I guess Steve is here in UK, he's using wrong. But yeah.
Where are you, Dinesh?
I'm in London.
All right. Yeah, no, it is available only in the US, but yeah, you need to put a US address in. You don't actually need to be in the US. So yeah, like I'm in Manchester here, but yeah, I had a US address, so I put that in. So it doesn't actually check or whatever. So as long as you put a US address, you're okay.
Yeah, but I think it picks up your default address. I have just it picks up, I think, somewhere from your credit card or somewhere from your profile, I guess. Yeah,
I don't know. Like I just went and registered, and it said put your zip code in, so I put a zip code in. So
I may want to try with a fresh window or something that doesn't have, you know.
Yeah. Okay. I'll probably try. Maybe some other account. I'll try to create an account. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, of course, I was registered in the US, but in fact, he told me, and I was happy because I'm now in India, and I can still continue to use it. Doesn't cause me problems.
Yeah, and just one point, Steve, as you were saying, you got around 0.31, and but you use both questions, you swap them. So I didn't swap them, and the accuracy when I compare with your notebook on a validation set, it wasn't much difference, just a point something. However, on the Kaggle itself, I get around 0.37, not 0.31. So interestingly, like I'm far behind. So it did make a difference, I guess, somewhere.
Yeah, like I found it made a slight difference, but it didn't make as much of a difference as I thought it was going to. But yeah, like it gives you a fractionally better score.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But interestingly, not when you're training on your on a collab, but once you post it on the Kaggle itself, it gives you like 0.7 difference automatically. So it's a good trick there.
Yeah, it was like Goutham's
so it
trick.
seems like the model.
Yeah,
the model seems to, from what you're saying, model seems to generalize much better, right? Because if it's that different, 0.31 versus 3.7, that's pretty significant.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. If nothing else, then thanks, folks. Let's keep pushing and try different ideas. Kind of people have gotten to 0.16 and 1.3, so still a ways to go for us. Okay, everybody. Unless anybody else had any other thoughts,